Can I
But
do the
yeah.
intro?
Well,
Go for it.
don't count, mother.
Just
Hey,
wait
what's this shit
until
called again?
Cerebral Cocktail, bro. What the fuck?
Fucking joking, God.
Oh.
See, my joke.
pick up
are
on his
joke.
cues, man. He's
You
always
are a
joking, and you're
joke.
always the first one to be like.
Because I'm from the West Coast and he's from the East Coast. We have a different sense of
But
humor.
everybody else gets it except you.
Yeah, well, I'm like a little artistic, okay?
So am I. What are you talking about? So is
Little
Alex. What do you
autistic.
mean?
All
I
right,
meant
good
autistic.
people of San Diego and across the nation, if you are tuning in from the... Hello, good people from California and across the nation, if you're turning... Fuck. Hello, good people from the...
Hello, Internet. Welcome
I'm not doing
from
the intro. I'm not made for it.
Welcome.
I'm not made for it.
NK music on the track.
Welcome from San Diego, California. Cerebral Cocktail is live, and I am here with...
Smiley.
Jordan.
420.
And we are talking about movies today. We've always discussed the expansiveness of this podcast, and I figured we would go somewhere interstellar beyond this universe. So we could just talk about some fun shit, you know? Everyone likes movies. Coronavirus is hard right now. Everyone's subscribing to Netflix and Hulu and all of the above. So we're going to give out some recommendations, throw out some opinions about certain movies, and we're just going to talk a little bit. So stay tuned and enjoy.
I'm thinking of getting HBO purely for the
You had
shows.
HBO for Game of Thrones when it ended, and then all of you were disappointed. I remember I was laying in bed, and then I walked out in the middle of the final scene, and everyone's like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah,
Everyone
I was pretty
so
disappointed.
mad, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back now, I'm pretty disappointed. Like, when it ended, like, I felt satisfied, and then it took, like, a couple days to, like, think
Process
about,
all
like,
of it.
Yeah, about, like, how everything really,
Yeah.
you know, went down. And, yeah, I was pretty disappointed. But I still have HBO.
I mean, I would be too. That show was what, like 7 years in the making, and
I don't know.
the books didn't even get finished. That's what most people complained about. Is that
Well, that's
what
why
is
the series
George
ended
Tolkien,
because
or what is his name?
I don't know, but the author of Game of Thrones, they were kind of forcing him to finish the
Yeah, they
series
just
so
wanted
they
him to
could
go
finish
as
the
fast as
series.
possible.
But he was like, "No, I'm not going to do that." So then they broke their contract, which is why they went to the amount of seasons they went to, is because there was no more content. So then the writers had to kind of create something on their own.
So they
That's
pretty much
why
freestyled,
Baron
like, the
was
last
the
season.
king at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Didn't
I didn't
make
know
any
that.
sense.
I thought the
George
books-
R.R. Martin. That's what it is. Tolkien is Lord of the Rings, but
Yeah, I thought
George
the
R.R. Martin has explained his disbelief and disappointment within the show because of how it turned out. Because when you have 2 books left, 2 whole books, and mind you that these books are about 1,000 pages long, that gets left out from the whole series. They're obviously not going to come out with the ending that he wanted. Therefore, everyone was disappointed. Because,
Or that was intended.
I mean, they expected as if they knew what everyone wanted, and that's what they created, but obviously that's not what happened, because the internet literally exploded when that show ended.
So with that being said, though, what would be your favorite like book to movie like translation?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because there's a
Oh,
lot
that's
of like
hard.
books that got made into movies. For me personally, it would probably be like the Hunger Games trilogy.
I was going to say,
was
actually, the Hunger
just
Games
about to
did
say
pretty
that,
well
yeah.
at translating what they put into the books into the movie.
Except the third movie. The third movie was kind of a letdown for me because I read the book series when I think I was in like 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah. That was like middle school for us.
And then when did the movie series?
The
come out?
movie started coming out around 2012-ish. All I know is that
Let's
there
fact check that.
was a certain amount of grittiness that had occurred within the series that they chose to leave out from the movies because they wanted it to be more family accessible, and to me it didn't work out at all. Because the book, the girl when the girl gets hung in the first book, the little girl that Katniss is taking care of, in the book it's so like gnarly and raunchy, and she's getting hung by the trees and all this.
2012.
Yeah, 2012, and they made it seem as if it was just kind of this nonchalant ordeal. They did put some emphasis on it, but when it comes to writing, there's a certain level of depth that occurs because you're able to put in the fullest extent of detail that you're willing to communicate to whoever's reading the novel that cannot be necessarily put into the movie, especially when you're targeting a certain audience, because when you're going for those ratings, when you're going for G, PG, PG-13, R, there's certain marks that are hit that make it PG-13 or R rated. Therefore, like with Disney and all the Marvel movies, those comics can sometimes be grotesque. Wolverine and X-Men is one of the gnarliest comic book series of all time, but the only R-rated X-Men movie that has come out is Logan, and that's because that's how they closed out the series. Well, at least the original version of it. Therefore, you really can't live up to the potential of it. And so the book does carry a certain amount of weight that a movie can never adapt to because they're trying to reach certain people. But at the same time, it is admissible because that visualization of a story is much more appreciated by the public than anything. No one likes to read anymore. I don't have any friends that are like, oh, what book are you reading? You know, no one really gives a shit.
You need more intellectual friends.
Yeah, I live with you guys, so I mean, that's on you.
I mean, I read, so.
I read.
Jay doesn't know how to read.
Yeah, no, Jay.
Jay read a book I gave him.
Yeah. Come on,
What
guys.
book was that again?
Check.
Alchemist.
I Spy.
I haven't finished it yet though. The last week or so, I've kind of just been.
You know what's funny about The Alchemist is that
Off
it's so
it.
popular, but they haven't made a movie version of the book yet.
They tried. I looked into it when I first read it. They tried to make a movie, but just the
I don't
screenwrite and all that.
I don't
wasn't
think
good.
any movie could live up to like what the Alchemist
No,
is as
that's
a book.
the whole point, though, is that these books have in-depth analysis about the characters, about the setting, about what's happening in the
development,
story.
the
It's like
attachment.
Harry Potter.
Exactly. If
nothing
you were
to
to
do
if you
with
were to
it.
put that into a movie, it would be 6 hours long. You know, like recently for a class, I had to watch a 4-hour rendition of Hamlet from I think in 1993 around there, and it was ridiculous. They put in every little bit of like what the playwright said in the writing into the movie. The dialogue between characters lasted 10 minutes per conversation, when realistically if they were to translate that into just the cinematic experience, it would have been half the time. But if you were to forfeit the risk of how long a movie's going to be, then it's going to be half the time. It's going to be like 2 hours, hour and a half. But if you put
Well,
everything
now that's
in there,
the average.
exactly. If you put everything in there, that's a 3 or 4 hour movie. 50 Shades of Grey. I never read it. But.
Definitely like a 3-hour movie like Marvel, like how the Endgame that
Yeah, but they
so
have
much
such a
content
wide
into
fan
it.
base to where they'll appeal with any sort of
They definitely
CGI
changed the movie industry though.
exploitation.
No,
No,
like
they did. They accumulated something that was irrelevant before. So what they basically did was they took a group of stories that were all separate in some sense, but also had some sort of unique connection between them, and they made it into a singular timeline that would eventually have an ending that applied to all universes. And that's why Endgame was so impactful on society, is because everyone went to see what happened to Spider-Man, what happened to Iron Man, what happened to Wonder Woman, or not Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, etc. Because people cared about one character or the another. They didn't necessarily care about the whole franchise itself. It's that it intertwined within all of the different superheroes. So these people from different genres of the superhero movies came in, wanted to experience what the ending would be, and they made a fuck ton of money from it.
yeah, it's definitely one of the highest grossing movies.
I'm looking that up right now.
Endgame was the highest grossing movies. They smashed the box office. Like smashed it.
Endgame was released April 24th of 2019. Gross as of May 13th, 2019, which is about 3 weeks later, was 1.7747 billion outside of the U.S. and Canada, and 728.4 million inside the U.S. and Canada, which makes the worldwide gross 2.503 billion. And that's fucking insane. If you think about the amount of work that goes into a company like Microsoft, Apple, any pharmaceutical company, it takes years to get to that point, you know, and it takes the expansion of products to get there. But with Endgame, what they did was they took a bunch of single entities and blended them together in order to just make a fuck ton of money.
Yeah, but it also had like a background to it. Like, it had lifelong fans from like the comics back in the 80s and
That's
70s.
true. It does have an
that carried over.
existentialism that reaches outside of the cinematic experience because people used to read about these stories instead of just watching them.
I think it's more of that generational, because there's a lot of parents that it's nostalgic, but it's appropriate for children now. So it's something that they're able to bond with. And I know it's something that I see in my family where it's like, you know, people in my family are super big on comics, but they're more into it now because the kids are into it, and it's just kind of a thing that they come together on. And you know, I think that kind of has an effect on how impactful these movies are, these franchises and stuff. So just an interesting perspective on
The
it.
movie genre in general is very interesting because I was thinking about this the other night because a lot of people that listening may not know, but I am a film major and I'm looking to create movies, to write for movies, to edit, whatever I can get in there doing because I'm trying to explore every aspect of it. But movies are a very expansive form of media. People love watching movies. Netflix, Roku, Amazon Prime, Hulu, everything is blowing up right now considering the pandemic that's at hand. And there's no better way to make money for a company than to give people something that they can watch while they're at home. So as we've been through quarantine and coronavirus, have you guys had any movies or TV shows that you've discovered that you've really enjoyed? And we will start with Jess.
I'm very picky with the content that I consume as far as just entertainment. If I like a show, it's probably because I've grown some sort of personal attachment to the storyline, or
Is that as far as personal relations to the storyline itself, or is it that your mind just kind of makes that connection to where you enjoy it?
I guess it kind of depends. Like, there's a show, This Is Us, that I love, but because it has that family feel, you know, and I like that feel good family feel drama type of thing.
Everywhere
but then
you go, everywhere.
classic sitcoms, yeah, no.
Family Matters.
No, that was Full House.
Yeah.
He said Family
Yeah,
Matters.
no, you're right.
Did I do
Yeah.
that?
Butchered that
Copyright.
one.
Yeah,
but
Jay.
there's
I'm just kidding.
in another case like Mr. Robot where I fell in love with
Mr. Robot is really cool. I haven't finished that yet, but that is a dope show.
the whole writing, the whole
It's
sequence
very
of everything.
futuristic. It's very modern, and it applies to the programming of every enterprise and company that exists right now.
Right.
Because everything is based out of an OS software, an operating system, something that can be held above the hardware that it is maintained within.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, people can access it, they can hack it, they can take that intellectual property and make it their own. And that's what's so dangerous about the future in a different sense, and a completely different conversation is that you can really steal someone's ideas with how the world is moving without anyone knowing.
But if you think about it, it's been like that from the beginning, you know. Art is just the recreation of something else, of recreation of another's art, you know.
Nothing is
essentially.
original at this point.
Right.
We are thousands upon millions, depending on what your view is, years of being old.
Right.
You know, the world and the universe is so old that anything that you think is original has definitely been thought of before. Because if you think about the extent to where people don't become fans, to where people don't publish things, they've had that idea.
And you can honestly tie that back to the movies industry though, because like how they're not creating new content, they're just rebuilding like old animated movies.
That Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Sonic, Lion King,
God.
all of the Tarzans.
Lion King was bad though. They got so much shit for what they did because they literally, at the most
It's the same
integral
movie.
parts, they made a shot-for-shot remake. They copied the songs, they copied the scenes, they had no original ideas, and they made more money than the original movie made.
Yeah, that movie sucked. I saw it in theaters, and I
Didn't
was
see
really
it.
disappointed. It felt really short, too.
I heard it was really bad. I never watched
I
it.
preferred the classic Lion King over the remake.
Yeah, definitely.
You
The
know?
classic is always better, but that's because also we have that predisposition to be where we were all born within the 90s.
Right.
That aesthetic of being kind of like a shitty cartoon, like not a perfect CGI. It has errors. It's very paper cut type of ordeal. We appreciate that. But when they recreate that and they make it into something completely new, like, it's really cool, not to say that it's not, like, an awesome story.
Right.
But it doesn't have the same, like, impact as it
Right.
would when we were a kid watching Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
Or Jungle Book. Anything that's been remade at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like with Lion King, they try to get too many big name actors. Like throughout the whole movie, when like Childish Gambino was Simba.
Yeah, they
like,
really
I just,
reach for shit, honestly.
I just recognized his voice too much, and like I couldn't feel like a personal attachment to like Simba anymore. Like, it was weird.
AMC is considering being bought by Amazon right now. And that is very interesting. The Daily Mail first reported Amazon's interest in buying AMC, which saw its shares skyrocket from 0% to 47% in active trading, according to MarketWatch, which is absolutely insane. Because some people might not know, I invest in stocks. I believe in the stock market. If you want to make money and you don't want to work that hard, you should download Robinhood, do what you need to do, and you will make money from it. AMC has been on a downward spiral. They were at about $12 a couple months ago, which was about 20% below their IPO, which is their initial pricing point. And at this point, they aren't making any money. The coronavirus is really fucking that up for them, because to go to AMC and to contribute any sort of funds to them, you have to go to a movie theater, you have to buy a ticket, you have to get food, like you have to do all that, pay their workers in order for them to stay established. But at this point, they're looking into the endeavor of being bought by Amazon so that they will provide the licensing to these certain movies and these certain franchises without having to lose any money. And what's your guys' opinion on that?
I think it's interesting how powerful and big a corporation Amazon is.
Amazon is insane. Jeff Bezos.
Amazon's gonna be like the new Disney, where they just buy all the streaming services.
Jeff Bezos, I'm pretty sure, is the most richest man in America, if not the world. He has a lot of power. He has a lot of factories in different countries. He knows all about offshore banking and everything that he's doing in order to not get any sort of federal tax taken upon him. Amazon, for I believe the second or third year in a row, has not paid in their income tax at all. When they filed their taxes, it was a fat zero.
Yep.
Which to me is insane, because there's kids that I know that worked at a restaurant for a whole year and they're paying money back. But there's this large scale company that has so many employees that are trying to do so many different collaborative efforts that don't owe any money at all. And that kind of just shows the support of large scale business compared to individual efforts at this point.
It's just interesting. I know the film industry, the Hollywood, it's struggling right now. I've seen article headlines talking about how Hollywood might be completely,
Fucked.
obliterated.
Literally fucked.
Once this comes back, because
there's a lot of profit to make up for that, because they moved several large movies like Mulan, like The Black Widow, that were supposed to make a lot of money for the industry, but at this point, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a rebuild process. As far as Amazon buying AMC, I don't know. I just know that I think
this is new as of today. I just saw this today. They're considering it. It's not anything official, but it did affect their stock by a vast amount, because AMC was on a downward spiral. What's your guys' classics? What have you been going back to throughout this time of pandemic? Is there anything that you love rewatching because it makes you feel better? Is there anything that you love rewatching because it feels like reality? What are the circumstances in which you are watching things right now and enjoying them?
Honestly, I just finished watching basically at least the trilogy of Pirates of the Caribbean. It was great. It just feeling nostalgic right now. Feels,
no, for sure. I mean, it
feels
like a better
remedy,
time in that way.
Exactly.
Because those came out when we were kids. It didn't matter as much.
Yeah.
And it just kind of makes you relive those circumstances that were at hand at that time.
And then the whole plot, the whole setting of the movie, the whole escape of the movie is freaking on boat ships going to the freaking Bahamas or somewhere nice. Like, it's a cool little place to just...
Yeah, I never saw Pirates of the Caribbean.
Really?
I think I saw the first one.
When I was a kid, I loved those movies, man.
We need to have a Pirates of the
Black
Caribbean night.
Pearl.
Aren't
at
they trying to
World's
remake
End,
it?
like,
And they're trying to.
I don't
I
think
thought
so.
I read something that they were trying to remake it, and they weren't gonna cast Johnny Depp.
So there's a bit of drama there. So I don't know if you guys
Johnny
have
Depp
heard.
is a narcissist, to say the least.
Well,
Johnny Depp has a lot of.
He has a very big
Backlash over the
ego.
last
He's gotten a
couple-
lot of shit
couple
over the
years.
years for how he acts and how he represents the characters that he has played that he doesn't necessarily have the right to play.
so that's actually pretty irrelevant to
I mean, that's kinda
what
odd.
happened to the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. So, I want to say maybe 2, maybe 3 years ago, within that time period, it hit the press that Johnny Depp was abusing his wife, and all this drama around it. He was getting backlash for it. You know, obviously people were quick to condemn him. So as a result of that, Disney canceled their contract with Johnny Depp. They didn't want him on the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise anymore because he had a bad rep at that point. And it's Disney, right? They're all about family values and saving face or whatever. And turns out, it came out recently, that his wife was actually the one abusing him, and she was lying and manipulating, and even in legal
Ain't that
terms.
some shit?
Yeah, so now he's trying to seek reparations because obviously she like completely destroyed his
His image,
reputation, his
yeah.
image. He's not allowed to work with Pirates of the Caribbean. So what they did, Pirates of the Caribbean isn't remade. It's kind of just they're adding to the storyline, right?
Mhm.
Or going different directions in a sense.
Yeah, maybe like a spin-off, like what they're doing with Star Wars.
Yeah, but from what I can remember, the latest Pirates of the Caribbean movie I saw, there wasn't a different Jack Sparrow, you know.
Mhm.
And if there was
Maybe
a Jack
there's
Sparrow,
no Jack Sparrow at all.
maybe.
I feel like that kind of makes a series.
Exactly.
Though, doesn't it?
He's-
that's
he's
the
a
issue
staple.
with movies at the center is that a lot of people go to a certain movie because of who is at the helm of the role. So if you take Spider-Man, for example, it started out with Tobey Maguire,
The best Spider-Man.
the best
there
Spider-Man,
ever was.
except for Spider-Man 3 when he hit his emo dance scene. No one likes that.
Okay, yeah, no, that movie sucked. But
the second
the
rendition
first two-
was Andrew Jackson, I believe is what his name
Andrew
is.
Garfield.
Andrew Garfield.
He hits
Andrew
at
Garfield.
the-
Yeah, Andrew Jackson
Yeah.
was the president. Andrew Garfield, and now it's Tom Holland.
yeah.
They've gone
Yeah.
through a
He's
lot
not
of
that
changes
bad though.
with that.
I like him too.
See, there's certain franchises that don't necessarily depend on who the main star is because they have the ability to rely on the fact that people like the series. But if you do look at something like Pirates of the Caribbean, I didn't really find it popular. I didn't know about Pirates of the Caribbean when I was a kid before the movies came out, you know?
Mhm.
Like, I feel like that almost relied on Johnny Depp because he
I
was
like
such...
Orlando Bloom more
Yeah.
than,
No,
more than
he's
Johnny
a dope.
Depp.
He's a
Keira
dope
Knightley
actor.
too, you know.
True.
Yeah, I was
The-
just about to ask who is the girl
Yeah.
actor. 'cause
The series
she was
as a
cute.
whole is exponential. Like it is in fact very compelling, and people love that series. But to a lot of people, you can't deny that Johnny Depp is not the reason they're going to see that movie.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
because the way that he plays Jack Sparrow, the way that he is kind of dark and adds a twist to the theme.
Johnny Depp is one of those
That's why I saw
immersive
The
actors,
Revenant.
Yeah,
just
but-
like
well, that
Christian
was the
Bale,
rush.
just like
Exactly,
Heath
yeah.
Ledger was, just like, you
He's
know,
the reason why.
these actors and actresses that just completely like become
Yeah, they
their
just engulf,
character.
like the role. They just embrace it so much.
how crazy, what a
Heath
crazy
Ledger,
concept.
probably the most relevant topic to our generation.
Definitely.
Okay, a lot of people think that he killed himself because the role of the Joker, but he overdosed, and they didn't declare that it was necessarily a part of the role. But you can't deny that having that sort of a schizo extreme mindset didn't affect him as a human being.
So
Everybody that's played the Joker has had a psychological
Except,
effect.
like,
Well,
Jack
Jack Nicholson is a psychopath, bro.
Is he?
He's crazy. Well, I mean, he's played The Shining. He's played the
Joaquin
Joker.
Phoenix.
Like,
But like
wha-
you don't really hear anything about him in the media or
not
like in
necessarily,
real life.
but that doesn't mean that they're not crazy per se. Because
I mean,
there
I feel
are
like they
people
would get
that
more attention if they were crazy.
yeah,
It
but
would be all
that's
out,
all.
especially in today's age.
That's dependent on real world circumstance. So that a
Yeah.
lot of people have the ability to kind of contract that character into who they are playing, which to me is like Jack Nicholson. In The Shining, he was a psychopath. What is the movie? Wilson. What is that movie? It's like
that's Tom
Castaway.
Hanks. Yeah.
Oh, is it really?
Tom Hanks is in
Will
Castaway.
Yeah, I've been talking about a lot about that movie.
No, but
lately.
Jack Nicholson,
That's a good
he's a
movie.
good
I love
actor,
that
but
movie.
he,
Good movie.
as far as the point goes, he maintained himself. Like he's not crazy. You see him at every Laker game, and he looks like a normal guy. We don't necessarily know that, but as far as we're concerned, he hasn't gotten in trouble for any sort of sexual
He also
misconduct.
comes from a very different
That's
time
true.
period.
That's true.
I
That's
feel like
true.
his image,
but that's
just
if
like
anything more
how
raunchy.
he looks, you could assume that he's crazy. But like, there's never been anything
Yeah, there's
about him
definitely
in the media.
you just get those vibes where something's a little off.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it is because of those roles he's played and just like how he chooses to dress and look.
Yeah.
But
Going back to Heath Ledger, so the theory around his death is that he was so focused on executing this character that he put himself in a mind state that was a little more depressive, a little more psychotic.
No, of course, yeah.
And to keep himself in that kind of headspace, he kind of in that process got hooked onto drugs. And the reason because of that, the whole heroin, methamphetamine through pharmaceutical companies, that's a whole nother topic to talk
that's
about
a pretty
another day.
dedicated actor.
Exactly.
Well, that's
Exactly.
what matters at the end of the day.
Because
Because
I'm sure
that's really
before-
willing to change who they are because of a character.
Yeah, but I'm sure before, like, he had to have weighed the options out. Like, am I gonna do this to
Right. And
just for a role? Like, I'm gonna do this to my body just to achieve some kind of excellence for
Yeah.
like this role.
Well, that's like what Joaquin Phoenix did to be the Joker, or I remember Christian Bale like completely starved himself, just became skin and bones for a role.
Disgusting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the weight loss and weight gain that actors go through for some kind of roles is really dramatic.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker lost what they say was 45 pounds because of the role that he had to play.
Yeah.
And
Jonah
he-
Hill for the movie War Dogs gained 150 pounds for one movie.
Mhm.
That's fucking crazy.
Pretty sure that was easy for Jonah
That's
Hill.
so bad for
No
your body.
offense.
Yeah,
That's-
it's terrible
that's
for your
crazy.
body.
That is crazy though. What do you guys think is more like more difficult for an actor to gain a certain amount of weight, like a drastic amount of weight, or to lose the weight?
I think it kind of depends on the personal mindset about it, because some people have a really bad stigmatism as far as weight gain goes. Some people really don't want to look above what they're supposed to be. And I feel
Jeans.
like as far as America goes, especially, that people don't like to look too big, because we embrace that skinny culture of whoever's famous, whoever's hot, you can see their ribs, there's nothing excess on their body. So anyone that really tries to get in the limelight of American media is trying to lose weight, not gain weight.
Yeah. And I think genes kind of play a role in that, like you were saying earlier, Jonah Hill, probably, easier for him to gain more weight.
Just because he's fluctuated through weight over
Exactly.
a lot of
unhealthy is
movie
that?
roles. Like when he jumped onto the scene, like I saw him. I was watching Click the other day, and I didn't even know he was in that movie. But he has a short scene where he's Adam Sandler's son
Oh yeah.
in a jump through time, and like
Yeah.
they're both really fat.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, and that was like probably the oldest movie I've seen Jonah Hill in. Besides maybe
Superbad.
Yeah,
Superbad?
he came onto the scene
Was that
in
his first movie?
Superbad.
Superbad was one of the first ones that he came out with.
And then he did this other movie called Accepted, where he dresses up as a chicken, and then he asks everybody.
He dresses up as a hot dog.
Oh yeah, a hot
hot
dog.
dog?
And he's like,
Ask
"Ask
me
me
about
about
my
my
wiener."
wiener." And then
How have
Justin
I never
Long,
even heard
yeah.
of that movie?
it's a great movie.
I think Emma Stone is in it too.
Yeah.
One of those
They
mid
got some
2000s. Yeah.
They got some history.
Yeah.
Those two.
But yeah, so for me, Pirates of the Caribbean is kind of what I've been binging, and shows here and there, but kind of passive shows. Nothing too serious.
Yeah, I've always been a big Star Wars fan. Just like ever since I was probably like 6, 7, 8. My stepfather at the time put me onto Star Wars, and he had like all the collectible like action figures and model like X-wing fighters and Millennium Falcons. So it just hits home for me in like a sense where it brings me back to my childhood, and to see like the movie franchise grow from like episode 4, 5, and 6
Oh, how it's
in
grown.
the 70s to 80s, and then I think they rebooted in like the early 2000s or 90s, and those movies were still good to me. I know some of them
1 and
still
2
get
sucked.
some of them get a lot of
Hated
backlash.
one
I
and
liked all
two.
the action, and the storyline wasn't necessarily as good as the first couple movies. And then most recently, episodes 7, 8, and 9. I just rewatched Rise of Skywalker like 2 nights ago, and that movie was pretty good, except for the end scene. End scene's kind of whack to me.
This is really weird.
When Lando Calrissian comes in with like everybody from the galaxy like behind
it's
him.
kind of like when Captain Marvel came into Endgame and just literally ended shit. Crashed
I
through
was
some
gonna
Thanos'
say
shit.
that was the only part of the end scene that I liked. Everything else was kind of just, I don't know. I felt it was rushed, and they could have taken their time and put something out that was better. But that part was dope.
I don't know, man. I feel like as far as the superhero movies go and those existential figures of beyond human knowledge being able to control like force or magic or powers, when you throw someone in there that just has overwhelming abilities and they're able to just end the fight right there, it kind of ruins it for me. Like when I saw Endgame and Captain Marvel crash through Thanos' ship, it felt like, well, if she just came in earlier, it would have been over already. But they waited that amount of time, and at that point, it's more about making the amount of money that they can make based off of how long the movie is. So they're definitely taking advantage of the situation at hand by using certain characters by a certain element, because if you just let them do what they need to do, then certain things would be over by then. In Star Wars, while I love it, they dragged it on.
Well, which
100%.
episodes do you love?
4, 5, and 6 are the best. I loved episode 3. I thought
4, 5, and 6 are the best?
4, 5, and 6 is the best trilogy. Episode 3 is the best single, and then 8 and 9 were the best of the new trilogies.
I feel like every trilogy has one standout movie.
Yeah, no, 100%.
1 to 3, not the first trilogy, the second trilogy in order of time. Episode 3 is the standout. That movie was amazing. It's still my favorite Star Wars movie. And then the first trilogy is episode 4. The second trilogy is episode 3, and the third trilogy is episode 9, in my opinion. Those are like the standouts in every trilogy.
Yeah, episode 9 was actually really good. They expanded very well upon the concept. I didn't think that was really going to live up to the expectations of the end of the first trilogy, but they did much better than 1, 2, and 3. Like, while 3 had a great ending, there's nothing to compare the trilogy of 4, 5, and 6, and 7, 8, and 9 to 1, 2, and 3, because 1, 2, and 3 only had 3 that was actually well put together.
I think 2 had strong points.
Yeah, it did. It has really good CGI. Like, that's the point in which I would say those secondary or that secondary trilogy really shined, was that we were starting to get into CGI, and they really took advantage of the Clone Wars and putting droids in and all that shit. That doesn't necessarily mean that the story is good, though. I mean, there was a whole conversation with Anakin about how he thinks the sand is the key, and the sand is so beautiful, and blah, blah, blah. Like, the dialogue was just very minimal, you know? And I feel like movies are progressing to a point where there's such a high standard for them that only literally the best can succeed, because people know that there's better shit out there if it's not the best.
Yeah.
So off of Star Wars, what have you been watching lately, Alex? Any good movies, any series? I know you're a big Marvel fan.
I
That's
rewatched
like
the
your shit.
whole Marvel series. All 19 movies.
All 19 movies?
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen all
18
19.
in the first three phases, and then I watched the new Spider-Man Far From Home, and that caps it off. It makes it like
That
a really
Spider-Man
good
Far
franchise.
From Home was not bad, not gonna lie.
That's like 2 weeks worth of movies, right? Has to be
Yeah.
easily.
Easily,
I wonder how many hours that is.
it's over 24 hours.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
it's
They-
gotta be.
What's it called? I Love You 3000 that Tony Stark says in the end of Endgame. That's because of there's 3,000 minutes in Marvel movies.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's a nice little Easter egg that I didn't know about.
From 2008 when Iron Man was first created to the last Endgame that like happened, and then Far From Home is like the movie right after Endgame. But yeah, I've rewatched all of them, and I love it.
I just saw Guardians of the Galaxy for the first time. The first two
I really like the soundtrack.
The soundtrack is dope.
Yeah. For the longest time, I was trying to get the soundtrack on vinyl, just because I feel like it would be a perfect soundtrack to have on vinyl.
I feel like a soundtrack has a much more impactful part of a movie than people expect it to.
It does.
Because it really sets the tone for the scene at hand, you know? You can't have a good scene without some music that's going to reflect the emotions behind it. Inception, the soundtrack is
Inception's a dope movie.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, right. Drink that water, Winston.
He's thirsty.
Thirsty bitch. Inception is definitely one of the first movies that comes to mind because the deep bass and the prolonged just melody amongst all the songs kind of creates such an emphasis on what's happening at hand. Music has such a big impact on movies, and I feel like a lot of people don't even really realize it because the music doesn't get as much recognition as it deserves. But as far as I'm concerned, that's part of what makes the movie. It sets the tone, you know? It helps make something complete as far as, is this intense? Is it funny? Is it sad? Is it happy? That's how you set that real background kind of melody to the whole scene.
Yeah, music is definitely like the conductor of emotions, and honestly, I could generally say anything.
What do you mean?
Music like sets the mood, it sets a tone or whatever in pretty much anything, but definitely in movies. Like the Black Panther movie, the soundtrack curated by Kendrick Lamar, like that one just...
Yeah, that shit was honestly so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Because it had been about a year, a year and a half since Kendrick Lamar had put out an album. Damn was the last album he put out, and then the Black Panther movie gets made, and it's produced by Kendrick Lamar, and everyone's like, oh shit. I feel
It's
like
about
that
to slap.
Exactly, I feel like that added an extra level of, this is going to be super sick.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be something that I want to watch, because it has that big name attached to it, you know? If you have someone that really matters, that is relevant to the point in which you're trying to make, there's no debating whether they have the right to try and make that soundtrack, because Kendrick Lamar is a rapper that is very close to Compton, South Side LA, the ghetto, the gangs, trying to make music that's relevant for mainstream while also holding on to the grudginess of gang culture. And for Black Panther, I feel like that was very exponential, because Black Panther was a very mainstream movie, as it is a Marvel movie, but he also made it kind of a hood rendition. When you hear All the Stars, when you hear the song with The Weeknd, I forget what it's called.
It's called...
It makes it so much better.
I thought it was... Is that the one with The Weeknd? All the Stars?
No, that's with SZA.
Yeah.
What movie rendition of like musicians' lives do you prefer the most? Like, there's like Straight Outta Compton, that new Bohemian Rhapsody movie.
Yeah. I really like Bohemian Rhapsody. I feel like that displayed Queen's emotions well.
The Netflix movie Dirt was pretty dope.
That movie was...
That one was... It was intense, though.
They have a very intense feel to them, though.
Yeah.
It's hard not to communicate that message when their message is so impactful. When they have such the need to destroy society and to be someone that stands out and to be someone that is just negative as far as societal standards go.
To confirm what you were talking about earlier, it's Pray For Me.
Pray For Me, The Weeknd, and the Kendrick Lamar.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But that soundtrack is good. But the Dirt really does represent like a very deep-seated kind of connection to...
Is that the one about Motley Crue?
Yeah.
Very...
Because the Motley Crue was a very
that movie's
destructive
cringe.
and...
All the
It's
needles
very
on
hand
it.
in hand with the American epidemic of drug use, you know?
I was gonna make that point that like if you don't like seeing a lot of drugs being used and needles, and if that kind of makes you twitchy or cringy, that movie's kind of hard to watch.
For me, my favorite biopic is Ray Charles. Old
I've
school.
never seen that shit.
Jamie Foxx plays Ray Charles.
I tried
That's
to watch
sick. I love
Cadillac
Jamie
Records
Foxx.
last night.
You what?
Cadillac
Records is a good one too, yeah.
Yeah.
But Ray is definitely my all-time.
I wasn't able to finish it. I got distracted.
No, but I think it's crazy how the movie industry is being affected right now because it really does make sense. If you look at the stock market, the streaming services are going up, the companies that hold movie theaters are going down, and it's something that requires public interaction to actually succeed and to make money. And that's
Yeah.
sad, you know? The fact that we need humans to make an industry succeed.
Well, that's what the whole economy is based on.
Well, yeah, but like, okay, there's a difference between human themselves consuming something and there's the human interaction of it all to where they have to be in groups. If you're talking about AMC, Regal, Cinepolis, that requires people to get together.
Right.
But if you're talking about Roku, Netflix, Hulu, it doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
And that begs the question, where is the future going? Are we going to be solely streaming, or do you guys think that movie theaters are going to remain open and prevalent to society?
I mean, drive-ins are open.
I feel like that that has a sort of relic to it, to where the drive-in feels like something your parents would have done. You know, it has meaningness to it.
When I went to the drive-in theater, I got fucked up. I'm not gonna lie.
Drive-in is the time to get fucked up. Trust.
I got fucked up at the start of the movie, and movies are like 2 hours long, so that's
Yeah.
plenty of time if you're 21 to sober up.
That's what I was gonna say. Because even at theaters, they sell drinks. So,
That's true.
like,
But it's
Exactly.
also like $20 per drink. Do you really want to be spending $60 to get fucked up
No,
while
you
you're
get
watching
the
a movie?
girl who has the purse that you're with to sneak it in. It's worked for me.
it's
Jordan
only
Brand.
illegal if you get caught.
It's worked for me. I mean, what are they gonna do? They're just
That's
gonna
very
No,
sexy.
I've gone to the movies with my cousin and
That's
he
not
brought in a beer.
sexist. I don't carry a
No,
purse.
yeah, it
Who
definitely
carries
works.
purses?
It just doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do.
What purse
you
do
know?
I own?
I'm just talking about the
Very
relevancy to a
I
drive-in
don't own
being.
one.
I'm just talking about the relevancy for a drive-in to be more accessible, more applicable to times like this where businesses like Soup Plantation, self-serving buffets are closing, and these things that put the public health at risk are no longer relevant considering the amount of precautions that we're trying to take in order to stop the spread of such a disease, viruses in the future, and the life that America is living.
I feel.
It has been wonderful speaking to all of you. Thank you for tuning in to Cerebral Cocktail. Stay tuned for more information. We are here for the important questions, the important life. God bless and stay safe. This is Lukey G signing off.
Jesus, was that a like political rally campaign?
All right, fuck you. Just say
This is Smiley checking out, y'all. Thanks for tuning in.
See you guys.
Hey, this is Alex. Lick my.
Terrible. You don't want to say bye a different way, maybe?
No. I wanted to be cool and unique. Cool and unique. Cool and unique.